Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Heretical Heathen podcast. I am your host, Robert Knox, and this week we're continuing our scrying series. So far, we have done Fehu through Anzus. This week, we are scrying Kenaz. For those unfamiliar, and if you made it this far into the podcast, why aren't you familiar with the runes? Get yourself a rune set, get some books, start studying on them, read up on them. Start practicing some rune magic. But this week we're doing Kenaz, and Kenaz is the torch rune in some of the poems, and in others it is a rune of ulcer. Unlike some of our other scrying sessions, I didn't set aside time on the weekend to really relax and get into the scrying process, and instead I decided to do it after work, which may or may not have affected the session. I did notice that it was sort of hard to maintain the visionary state, and maybe that's just from cumulative fatigue from being at work. But I went through with it nonetheless. And so here's how it went. So I started as I normally do, and if you've seen these episodes before, or if you've seen my episodes before, I start off in sort of like an astral temple, and I move on from there. This time was really interesting because another figure made its way into the temple, and this time it was a nude woman. Long, brunette-ish hair, maybe like a dirty blonde. And she showed up in the temple, and she led me to the door. Before this, I had sort of been trying real hard to incorporate all of my senses, because when you get into these spaces, you need to incorporate all your senses to really drop yourself into these environments. So this woman shows up, she leads me to the door, and then she just disappears. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't do anything. She doesn't give me any clues, doesn't give me any signs or anything. She just shows up and then fucks off. Now, after I step through the door, the images are very hard to hold on to. It's very hard to put myself in the environments, and maybe, again, that has something to do with just the cumulative fatigue. It's summertime. Work is getting more busier. It's a lot harder on the body. So maybe these scrying sessions are just going to be a little rough moving forward. I'm not sure. Regardless, I had a hard time holding the vision, and when I first stepped through the door, I found myself in a realm of just pure fire with like red ground. This is sort of like a classic hell look. If you're gonna do a Germanic coding, it'd be like the realm of Muspelheim. And then suddenly that realm of just fire turned into a forest, and the forest was on fire. And then from there, the fire subsided, and I was just in a forest at night. Couldn't see much, there's trees around me. And suddenly in my hand a torch appears. In my left hand, to be specific. And the torch, of course, illuminates the space a little bit, so finally I can see, and I start walking. And then, in front of me, I see a small being, like the size of a child. And as soon as the light sort of hits it and I can make it out, it turns and it runs away. Very creepy. Sort of like a new like Silent Hill or Resident Evil vibes. Now, despite seeing that creepy little thing in the forest, which if I seen in person, I would turn around and run like hell. But I'm not in person, so I just continue walking forward. And as I walk forward, I'm brought to what looked like a clearing, and I can make out that it's in the shape of a circle. And in the middle of a circle is another circle, which appears to be like a kind of fire pit. So I walk up to the fire pit, I take my torch, and I light the central fire. And once the central fire is lit, other fires immediately along the ground spread out to the outside of the circle. I could see at least 6. Maybe it was closer to like a clock where there's like 12 of them, but I can only make out 6 for sure. 3 in front, and somehow I knew that 3 behind me were lit as well. And they went so fast, it was almost like there was gas in the ground. It was very quick. The fire shot from the central pillar out to the outside ones. And as I'm standing there sort of looking at the fire, a man approaches me. He looks like an elf, and he's wearing like something that looks like mithril. It's like a very light armor. And this elf person tells me the thing I get told a lot in these spaces. Hey, human, you're not supposed to be here. And then he gestures to a chair that's in the circle that I didn't see before. I'm not really sure what to do at this point, so I just walk over to the chair and I sit in it. And after I sat in the chair, it starts to raise and it goes up high into the air. And then I open my sort of bay doors from like the chair that I'm sitting in and I just walk into this temple. And this time the woman is there again, completely nude, long, dirty blonde hair, and she gestures to a chair that I have in my temple. So I walk over to the chair, I sit down, and at this point, I'm sort of fading in and out of the vision. I'm having a really hard time maintaining it. And as I'm coming out, I hear audibly in the room with me, the big one's coming, the red one. Now, I have no idea what that means. It's been a few days. I still haven't figured it out. Nothing quite makes sense. I've seen nothing large or red in any of my dreams. Nothing showed up during meditations. I know maybe some of you might be leading Christian that are listening to this, or at least have those ideas in your mind, so you might hear the big one's coming, the red one, and think, oh no, it's Satan. But I highly doubt it. What is interesting is a few days after this scrying session, I had a chat with one Eric Clausen from the Platonic Pathway. Wait, no, that's wrong. It's just Platonic Path. That's my bad. And during this chat, we talked about a few things, but something that stood out to me is he mentioned a wheel with spokes going to the outside. And I thought, hey, that image directly corresponds to the clearing and the fires that I seen. One central fire, and then fires spreading along the ground, two fires at the edge of the circle. And I don't know if that's what the scrying session was trying to show me, but it's sort of interesting that those two images happen to appear within a few days. Something worth thinking about. Now, a few years ago, before I lived where I do now, and before I was involved with this heathen quote-unquote Golden Dawn system, I'm not quite sure if it really makes sense to call them the Golden Dawn. Maybe I'll get into that in the later episode. However, I was doing some of the meditations in the Rune Guild, and when I got to Kenaz, I could still vividly see it. I was also led to the woods at night. So there's something going on with like this dark place in this Kenaz rune, at least with me. I don't know if other people will see it as well. Except in that vision, I was walking through the woods, and suddenly torches appeared on a house, and I went into the house. Now, the vision was very quick, but during that visionary experience, I sort of got the feeling that Kenaz not only is about fire and potentially royalty or eating away at you, it's also about attention. It lets you know where your attention ought to be. And so you could use the Kenaz rune if you're sort of lost in the dark and you need to illuminate something. You need to find out where to place your attention. Kenaz being the torch rune can also be a symbol of controlled fire. The fire has been around for a long, long time. Our people have utilized this for many thousands of years, if not hundreds of thousands of years. And part of what fire allowed our species to do is it allowed us to survive at night. It illuminated the dark, something that only the moon had done before then. And what's really interesting, if you think in terms of giants or the Jotnar, there are fire giants, and in some ways, Kenaz, the torch, the fire in the middle, is a sort of representation of, let's say, our ability to tame the giants and work with them, bringing the giants into the Innengard. Now, there are some people in the sphere who will have certain reservations about that particular imagery. For them, the giants are the demons, they're the big baddies. But we do see in the Eddas and some of the myths, giants become Aesir. Skadi was a giant. She marries into the Aesir. She is an example of, let's say, taming the giants, the giant's ability to awaken to a new level of consciousness, being able to work with the people for the greater good. And the torch, on a very mundane level, is that exact pattern. It's taming the fire giants. That's weird. Is something in the room with me? Though if handled carelessly, the fire was still very, very dangerous, and it could harm and even kill. If you dropped the torch Back when homes were made of wood and other things that are very, very flammable, a whole village could go up and a whole village could be consumed? I'm gonna go consumed by the fire giants. I'm keeping all that in because I'm awesome. And in the Western ceremonial tradition, fire is associated with the will. Sometimes too with emotions, but that's more linked to water. So we'll think of like will, your desire to do something, to push for that which you want most. And much like other fires, you can utilize this, you can tame it, you can make it into a torch so you can see where it's going. But if things get out of hand, you'll burn up. You'll end up like a Crowley figure who ends up going through his whole life barely being a person. But a controlled fire can burn away unwanted thoughts. It can burn away unwanted behaviors. But it has to be handled with care. I mean, fire just naturally wants to expand. It's not under your control. And so you have to be very careful with how you use it because it can cause immense damage. So the same fire that can be used at night to keep predators at bay can be used in you to keep those same predators at bay. Because the predators that are out there are also in you. They're not different. This is something you'll see in some demonology stuff too, depending on who you're reading. It's like, look, sure, are there external demons? Are there external giants? Yes. But there's also a ton of internal ones as well. And if that fire gets out of control, they will consume you. They will devour you. And they'll just keep going unless you learn how to tame that fire. And this is where Kenaz can come in. So now you might be wondering, well, how do I do this? If Kenaz is such an important rune, how do I use it to tame the fire? As mentioned in previous episode, your most powerful tool is going to be meditation. Not just on the rune, meditation in general. When you learn to meditate, you're calming the fire. As you're bringing Isa, you're bringing ice into the nervous system. And when you do that, it allows you to see where the fires may be out of control. Like during meditation, you will have what some people call like intrusive thoughts. You will keep having thoughts, which is totally natural. Some people don't meditate because they think that like they can't stop thinking. Well, the mind naturally thinks. That's what the mind is supposed to do. But you can see what the mind is thinking of. You can think of those as little torches, little fires that are going on inside of you. Like maybe, and I have this in myself, I will imagine arguments that happened during the day or something that was said to me, and I will turn it into this long argument where I'm going back and forth with myself with things that I could have or should have said. That's a fire. I know it's there. I can see it. Some people don't know they do that. They're just going about it unconsciously. That's an example of the fire being out of control. And meditation allows you to stop and say, hey, I see you, fire giant, I see what you're doing. Maybe even I know why you're doing it. Maybe there's a good evolutionary reason for this behavior. But now is not the time. And so you're taking that fire that's out of control and you're making a torch out of it and being like, look, now you're under my control. I'm going to use you. Or at the very least, I now have you under my control, which is very, very important. The act of meditation alone should give you the tool to do that. However, it might not work for everybody, and so we can meditate on more particular things, such as the Kenaz rune itself. You can meditate on the image of it, and while you're doing that, it's going to create a complex in your mind of associations. It's going to build a nice sort of fire matrix, and you can focus on the rune poems. And by meditating on these things, which you only have to do for like 5-10 minutes a day, set a timer, but by focusing on these things, you will learn to spot the patterns outside of you. And then by being able to spot them outside of you, you'll be able to spot them inside of you as well. Now, this probably shouldn't need saying, but not enough people say it, so I'll say it. This won't be perfect. You will struggle with this. You will always struggle with this. Sure, you'll improve over time, but there's going to be moments where you fall off the horse, and then you just have to get right back on it. I still spiral on occasion, but I'm better at catching myself. Not just in my head, I'm better at catching myself at arguing on social media too. I'm starting to recognize, like, hey, this pattern is getting out of control. Let's tame it back. Let's chill for a minute. Let's not feed this fire. Let's get it under my control. But a lot of magicians want to sell you this idea that, hey, if you take my program, if you take my classes, you will get the super duper power to control everything around you and your own behavior. And that's just not realistic. The fire is going to burn, because that's what fires do. They consume, and they consume, like Udgar Logi. They will just consume ad infinitum, and you have to learn how to spot them and get them under control. Well, I think I've said all that needs to be said about Kenaz and fire, and there are more fire runes coming, so I'm sure I'll have more to say then. But for now, I think this was an okay, albeit short episode. If you guys like what I do here, please leave me a like, share the video, tell all your friends, send me people over. The more people watching this, the more likely I am to be able to focus on this full time, which will allow me to do other fun projects like maybe create rune class courses or even a book in the future. So again, like, subscribe, share this on all your socials. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and if you have anything to ask about Kenaz or any insights, please leave them in the comments section. This is the Heretical Heathen Podcast, and I am the host, Robert Knox. Thank you all, and have a wonderful